The woods are full of stars. They flicker, come closer, run away. They want me to chase them, to play hide and seek. Do I observe or I hide? Observe it. I watch as they dance around the tree trunks, float up on the gust of winds that shiver through the branches, disappear among the leaves. There are words in their dance, but I understand them. Not yet. Then they bunch up and fly towards me like an arrow, rushing down. They're soon upon me, but just before the sphere of light pierces my breast, they disappear and the darkness of the night returns. In the darkness, the spirits keeping the forest alive whisper about the enemy. Begin to move. I begin to move, unnoticed, one with the night, and then I wake up. Confused, I open my eyes. The around me is thick, dark, and reeks of decay, to the extent that it's hard to breathe. Am I here? My head is spinning. Why am I here? Trunks wrapped tightly in the dark ivy are covered in lichen, where the vines haven't taken. Thorny, leafless bushes at their overrun with nets. Fungi radiate with a green light. Dark sponge-like mushrooms cling to the fallen tree. I know it's summer, but I feel where are my clothes? Look down and see the hands are covered in a dark substance, naked. Aroma of liquid clinging to my skin. I could feel. Well, obviously a werewolf that just killed somebody. Nature is never quiet. The leaves rustle in the wind. Small creatures scuttle in the undergrowth. There is a whisper. I don't understand what it means. The word resonates. Garo said that. There's a severed head right in front of me. I'd probably... The face is contorted, the eyes bulging, the mouth open. Obscene. I feel bile rising my... Then my eyes open. I can see their silhouettes, shades of jet black against the darkness, all of fur, moss, and bloodied earth. Massive, some with thorns, some. Their eyes burn like small fiery windows of hell. Look at them. I get up and start to run. I catch my foot on a gnarled root and fall over. Brambles reach out for me, wrapping their thorny limbs around my legs. I struggle and fall face first into the ground. Moss covers my face and pushes itself in my open mouth, choking me. In a moment of clarity, I almost understand what the force wants. Then I wake up. Hello? Turn that up. There we go. Start the chapter. Maya, wake up. I opened my eyes. My neck was stiff. I stretched lazily as I assessed where I was out of the corner of my eye. I wasn't in the forest anymore. I was in the bus. The sun streaming through the windows was making it hard to see. The girl next to me was touching my shoulder. Disturbed. It's alright. I squeezed her hand to comfort her. She looked at me concerned. You had a bad dream. The memory of the wet earth clogging my mouth was still there. I fought the urge to retch. I was glad I wasn't alone. Thank you for coming with me, I said. The girl next to me smiled. I think we're almost there. Her name was Anya. We'd met a couple of weeks earlier on the orientation day. She was from Norway. Tall, broad-shouldered, calm person who wore her long hair in braids. Somehow I managed to talk her into this crazy field trip across the land of my ancestors. She seemed excited. Anya reached into her backpack and took out two apples. I'm really happy you decided to come here, she said. Yeah, I said, offering her some of my cabanasi, dried meaty sausages. Okay. I was glad Anya had decided to come with me. I had problems keeping friends around and really needed one. I did some searching, she said from over her phone, and this place is amazing. The last primordial forest in Europe. Our summer language course was starting in a few weeks, and I managed to talk Anya into skipping the tours of concentration camps and old churches and visiting, oh my god, Bialowiezia National Park with me instead. So far it's beautiful, she said, her eyes smiling, but why are we here again? Why were we there? There being, oh my god, Bialowiezia, a small village in northeast Poland near the border with Belarus. It was famous for its national park, the very last European bison. And according to a quick web search, occasional tensions between far-right troublemakers and a local Belarusian community, Belarusian community, the most honest answers would have been, because I've been dreaming about the forest in Bialowiezia since I can remember. But people didn't understand when I said things like that. I need to look up how to pronounce this. How to pronounce Bialowiezia. Excuse me? Bialowiezia? I don't know. I'm gonna just pronounce it. I fucked up way the entire time. I'm looking for my roots. I kept it simple so I wouldn't freak her out. What I didn't tell her was even more important. I knew my family was from there. None of my relatives spoke about it though. There were a lot of things that weren't spoken about in my life. Strange dreams that plagued me, half-forgotten tales about forests and wolves that I'd heard before my mom took me, ran away, and cut off all contact with my dad and his family. Anya fell silent for a moment. Anya's friendly. I think it's great that you come from such a magical place, she said. The last ancient forest in Europe, thousands of years old. I wasn't sure if I was fond of that magic, but it was hard to ignore. And that was precisely why I needed to do something, anything about my future. That damn forest and my weird-ass family. I wasn't there by mistake. I'd planned this trip for months with a clear goal in mind. I had to learn the truth. My grandfather's stories, the secrets, my mother running away, there was a mystery in my past. It was time I uncovered the truth about who I was. There was a mystery to uncover and an adventure to be had. I couldn't wait. Bialowiezia. It looked like an overexposed photo of a village with the contrast turned all the way up. It was a hot, sleepy day on a hot, sleepy street, and everything, the old trees, the yellow grass, the weathered wooden houses, the fences seemed almost normal. Everything except the shadows. They were sharp as though they were freshly printed with the darkest of inks. For a second I could have sworn they moved, but then I realized it was just a black cat walking down the sidewalk when it saw me. It stopped in its tracks. I tried to pet it. "Here, kitty, kitty, kitty," I said, squatting and reaching forward to the cat. It rammed me affectionately with its head and started rubbing against my leg, totally ignoring the outstretched hand. "Hey, Maya," Anya said, looking at me, surprised. "Didn't you say your friend would be waiting for us here?" But he wasn't there, and the cat was still staring at me. "Let's go," Anya put on her backpack. "I'm tired and I really, really need to find a toilet." For a moment, I was tempted to just get out of the sun and worry about my missing friend later. Uh, what do I want to do? Do I want to wait? I mean, I would probably wait. "Let's just wait a little longer," I said. "I don't have his number and we really need to meet up with him." His name was Bartek. I'd met him online while researching Białowieża. Białowieża is a village in the Poland. Okay. Białowieża. Białowieża. The man knew everything there was to know about local history. I asked him to check with anyone in the town remembers my grandparents. "I hope he's found something. I really need to pee," Anya said, like a 5-year-old and not a very bright one. "Let's just wait a few minutes longer, please, pretty please." I made my best puppy eyes. "It's important. The things we do for friends." Anya looked around to see if anyone was coming and then made a beeline for the nearest bush. "Watch my backpack and you owe me." So I waited and watched, and the creepy cat waited with me. It's not creepy. It nudged me. It loves me. Bartek was 15 minutes late, flustered and apologetic. It was his dad's company, and he explained while catching up with me. While catching his breath. He had to help him out with some paperwork. He seemed uncomfortable. "I thought you were on a summer break," I said, noticing his discomfort. "You said you study forestry. "I do, but my dad has a lot of different businesses. One of them is loosely connected to woods, so he uses me whenever he can," he said as he rubbed his neck. "Fathers," I shrugged. I could understand daddy issues. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and had freckles all over his face. "Come on, I'll take you to your place." His accent was broad and very Eastern European. Let's ask him a bunch of questions. Luckily, he loved talking about his home, so when I flooded him with questions, he kindly obliged. He talked about how the village had become a tourist destination, how the logging industry had moved to a nearby town, how the trains had stopped coming, and how the local train station had turned into a hotel for wealthy foreign hunters. The dozens and dozens of bison and statues scattered around the village watched us indifferently. We walked along the only street in the village, slowly making our way towards the outskirts. The trees were growing denser, their scents becoming richer and more pronounced. Joel found. So, did you manage to trace the name I gave you? I asked. Bartek shook his head. Nothing, absolutely nothing. Sorry. He was avoiding my eyes. A trickle of sweat ran down his temple. He looked afraid. What's up, man? I smiled. Spill the beans. I'm a big girl. I can take it. But he just clammed up. You know what? I think you should drop it. I stopped. Bartek tensed up, but I just shrugged and smiled. Okay, let's go. I winked at Anya, but he looked like I pulled the rug out from under him. But he said it was important. Um, it was important, I said, sounding much more sincere than I felt. But I care about your feelings, and if you don't want to tell me, that's fine. The game tracks your decisions. They will accumulate, gradually reveal what kind of person she is. Deep in her heart, the story changes to reflect Miles' personality. Well, he brushed his forehead with the back of his hand. I did ask. I started with the old people here. I told them that my friend was from the States, was looking for her roots, and wanted to know about the place her family came from. You know the drill. At first, people were very receptive. Receptive. I waited for the other shoe to drop, and then I mentioned your name. He shook his head. Bartek, no dramatic pauses, please, I urged him. The tension is killing me. One of the old men here told me to go to hell, the other spat on the ground, and his wife crossed herself. For a moment, he looked younger and smaller. And then my own grandmother told me to stop asking. She said something else as well. What? I asked. Told me to pray for you. Suddenly, the sweet golden afternoon wasn't so sweet and golden anymore. I looked at Barrick, and I saw that the stories he'd heard had clearly strained something between us. He was afraid of me. Who was I? We walked in silence, but my mind was overdrive. People didn't want to talk, and that could only mean one thing. My pulse quickened. I tensed up like a hound that smelled blood. I was on the right track. Białowieża had a few hotels and hostels, but the preferred form of accommodation was bed and breakfast. I found one that was nice, clean, and that had good reviews. We had a room on the second floor with a huge window and a great view of the forest. We dropped off our stuff and soon we were ready to head out again. The day was hot and we were young and restless. Will you show us around? Anya smiled at Bartek. Sure, what do you want to see? Before you go, check out your character sheet. Look for it on the upper right corner. You can find blah 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 who your friends and enemies are. Okay. Not brave. Inspire, analytic, spiritual, cunning. Healthy. Life's complicated. Let's keep it in the town. I walked around the village. We walked through the village, bathed in the sharp rays of the summer sun. It was a lazy afternoon, disturbed only by the occasional passing car throwing up clouds of dust that hung in the air long after the vehicle was gone. Anya was walking close to Bartek, asking him about every little detail in the village. People were relaxing or working in their yards. Dogs were barking, and every cat we passed froze to look at us. People seemed quite friendly, though some of them smiled at us as we passed by, and every once in a while we stopped for some small talk with people who knew Bartek. You like newcomers here, don't you? I smiled. That's a good strategy in a tourist destination. Yeah, it works normally, Bartek said with a faint smile, but lately people have been getting riled up. Yeah, tourists. I understand, I sighed. Tourists can be assholes. Yeah, but there's not only tourists here, Bartek scratched his neck, embarrassed by the topic. There's a small conflict around the forest, you know, and it's attracting some weird people. Activists, reporters, bored rich kids, he said, as though his dad didn't own multiple businesses. People like that, and they're getting on the locals' nerves. Anya looked skeptical. I looked the conflict up online, she said, and it didn't look so small. It looked pretty important, actually. For a moment, Bartek looked like he was lost for words. Well, you're not one of those crazies, and you're like, almost local, he smiled. So what would you like to see in the village of your ancestors? He spread his arms as if to show me all the splendor the village had to offer. Let's visit the village center. This is such a nice village, exclaimed Anya as we walked along the quiet street. Nothing moved. The heat was stifling. I like how peaceful it is, I admitted. I can finally slow down and just unwind. Let's go get something to drink, I proposed. I'm parched. The local store was a large mini-mart with all kinds of goods, from beer and vegetables to notebooks and pens. There was a bench near the entrance, and on it were a few local drunks. They looked colorful, so I waved at them as we passed. One of them, Wolf, whistled and Bartek winced. Who are you? I laughed at them. The local bums of the year? You must be so proud. Hey, shut it, one of them shouted back. Have some respect. Oh, I'm sorry, I said with a faint sympathy. Did you manage to lose that competition as well? After a moment of tense silence, they burst in laughter. We spent some time inside browsing the Latvian, Lithuanian, and Belarusian goods. Why was there almost nothing Polish here? And who was in their right mind? And who in their right mind drinks coriander soda? Soda. Oh my god. I was putting the sodas back off the shelf when we heard a commotion coming from outside. Some slurs, some curses, and a clear, mockingly polite, "I'm so sorry, darlings. I don't understand. You like my skirt?" Ah, fuck, Bartek murmured under his breath. Tried to stay out of it. I tensed up and focused on my shopping, trying to ignore the ruckus, but no matter how much I fought it, eventually my curiosity got the better of me. That's when I saw what it was all about. The person was old, not helpless granny old, but old with deep wrinkles and a narrow mouth. They had a unisex grace of a tired heroin preserved rockman. Their shoulder-length, disheveled hair completed the look. They had a peculiar style, fashion, that you rarely see even in the US. It looked great on them. They thought they had a clean shave and eyes highlighted with eyeliner. Their nails were painted in bright blue. They wore heavy arm boots, an outrageously red skirt, a tank top, and lots of leather jewelry. On their bags there were pins, lots of pins, all kinds of LGBTQA plus flags, anarchist and pacifist symbols, and I think some German band stripes. Let's approach the foreigners. I smiled and ignored the men, approaching the foreigner. "Hi, I'm Maya. I just got here," I said. They looked at me with a serene smile. "Nice to meet you, Maya," they said with an unmistakable German accent. I'm Kim." "What brings you here?" I asked. "I'm Białowieża. Białowieża, I mean. I came here to see the forest and to protect it." They sounded deadly serious. Me and my friends heard about what was happening here, and we decided to come and help. The men on the bench were looking at us grimly. "Hey," someone said suddenly from behind our backs. Kim smiled and the men on the benches stiffened. I turned around. The woman approaching us had the longest, thickest braids I'd ever seen, as thick as my arms. There was something faintly Asian about her facial features, and the men on the bench looked at her with deference. You should stop drinking that moonshine. It makes you pick fights. You can't win, she said. She looked ferocious, and the drunks started to explain themselves. Look at this. Elgionia, said one of them, gesturing towards us. For the last fucking time, the name's Lisa. Lisa. She pronounced it Lisa. Lisa. And this is my friend you're talking to. You're to leave them alone, got it? Her Polish sounded weird, more melodic, or maybe mellower, even when she cursed. The drunk guards mumbled and went back to drinking. Thanks, Lisa, Kim said in English. You shouldn't have. Oh, but I wanted to. Why did they listen to you? I asked. She turned to me and shrugged with just a hint of smile. Oh, they have their reasons. She looked me up and down, and who would you be? This is Maya, smiled Kim. She's also not from here. Oh, are you here to protest the logging? She raised her eyebrows, or just a tourist? Wait, isn't this place like a national park? I asked. Why are they logging here? You'd think they'd leave the oldest forest on the continent, the beating heart of it alone. Wouldn't you? She looked at me with a grim expression. That's illegal, logging here, Anya chipped in. Wood is money, and there's plenty of wood in this forest. Suddenly, a feeling rushed over me. Suddenly, I felt cold despite the hot, sticky summer air, as though there were a wind in front. Oh my god, I can't talk right now. As though there were a wind from the forest that blew only for me, inside me, chilling my bones and blood. There was something sad and helpless about it, even though it felt all-powerful. A word appeared in my mind, a strange one that was neither Polish nor English. Orano. Lisa looked at me in the eyes and spat on the ground. I'd eat those greedy bastards alive. I realized they knew I just felt this strange connection to the forest. Tell me, I asked. I know you have strange dreams, they whispered. I suspect the forest is reaching out to you. They leaned closer to me. It runs in your blood. The words were like a punch to the gut. Trust me, I know. Who am I? I asked quietly. You can see the invisible, they said, looking me in the eyes. You'll find the way. I felt a sudden surge of confidence. I wasn't making that up. There was something strange in my family history, and there were people who knew what was going on. Before I could ask more, Anya and Bartek approached, and Kim shook their heads, silencing me. Meet us tomorrow at the logging site. They blew me a kiss, put their arms around Lisa, and walked away. Alright, let's go check out the graveyard. So, we have quite a few churches here, Bartek explained as we walked down the road. 2 Orthodox, 1 Catholic, and even 1 Baptist church, he said, as though it were something uncommon. Oh, I asked about it. And what's so special about that? I wasn't sure what he meant. He looked at me, a bit disoriented, and then it hit him. Oh, of course, you're not from here. Well, Poland is almost exclusively Catholic, though it's a bit uncommon to have all these denominations in one small village. Any Lutheran churches? Asked Anya. I don't think so. Bartek shook his head as he led us to a small wooden church surrounded by a cemetery. Anyway, even though we have all these churches, there's only one cemetery. The church was Orthodox, but the graves were a mishmash of styles and faiths. Catholic, Orthodox, atheist, everyone resting together. That's a nice sentiment. There's something poetic about everyone meeting in the same place where they die. Bartek smiled. There is, isn't there? He looked at the cemetery, and for a moment he seemed lost in his thoughts. All of my family lies here, he said. I mean, the ones that are dead. Hey, what do you think? What do you think happens when you die? You echo for some time, or a ripple, you know. I think that everything in this world has a trace. I was looking for the right word. An aura, emanation, call it what you want. And it doesn't dissolve right away. Bartek seemed unsure. Is that like a new age thing? He looked over the cemetery fence. Well, anyway, this is it. The spiritual heart of Białowieża. We can go see something else if you like. So that's where we stood. I wanted to go in, and he was clearly scared to let me enter the cemetery. Not so fast. I want to look for my family here, remember? I smiled, opening the gate. Bartek shifted uncomfortably. I don't know if that's a good idea. What? Why? I turned to him, surprised. I mean, I told you, people have weird reactions. Maybe it's better to leave it alone. So what are we waiting for? Anya smiled at him. He mumbled something and led us through the labyrinth of graves to the far end of the cemetery. The walkways were very narrow, and the whole place seemed quite chaotic. Catholic crosses, Orthodox crosses, no crosses at all, huge statues and simple gravestones, graves you couldn't see because of all the flowers, and graves that seemed completely forgotten. And then I saw the woman, tall, broad-shouldered, and long-legged, with a gray dreadlocks pinned to the crown of her forehead. She must have been in here in her late 40s or nearly early 50s. She was marching through the walkways with fury in her eyes. Bartek quickly stepped between the graves to get out of her way. I didn't see any reason to move out of someone's way, so I didn't. Are you lost? Asked the woman in Polish, looking at me with concern. Actually, I'm looking for an old grave, I said. My family lived here, and what's the name? Borodais, I answered with a perfect Polish accent. She raised her eyebrows. I'm just coming back from there. Go to the end of here, turn left, and go to the far corner of the wall. She looked at me in a funny way. Oh, thank you. Bartek didn't seem to know the way. I think it was the only when then that she noticed him. Oh, it's you, she said with barely hidden disdain. Well, I better get going. See you around, I guess. With that, she left, followed by Bartek's hostile gaze. Who was that? I asked, watching the woman leave. Bartek winced. Oh, that's Olga. She's a local activist. She left Białowieża when she was 18 or something, and returned a few years back with the notion that she was going to change this place. We continued to the far corner of the cemetery. There, seemingly forgotten and covered in moss, was a lonely grave. Um, I'm I'm like pretty early on, I suppose, but so far it's like reading a good book, I think. Um, and there seems to be a lot of different ways to go about things based on your stats and willpower and all that stuff. Um, I haven't played many games in this style. I did get the Vampire Masquerade games, but I haven't touched them yet. The not the main RPG, but like the novels. Definitely give it a try if like this is a type of story that interests you. It's kind of like a trying to find yourself kind of story. It seems like so far, but it might be the path I'm taking. Um, I'll actually be right back. I gotta pee really bad. Okay. We continued to the far corner of the cemetery. There, seemingly forgotten and covered in moss, was a lonely grave. The tombstone was broken, deliberately. Someone had obviously smashed it with a hammer. The plaque was also damaged. Someone had tried to scratch out the name, but the letters were still visible. There was a circle of coarse salt around the grave. I'm sorry, Bartok sighed. I didn't want you to see that. I looked at the scene. The circle around the grave was broken, and the disturbed soil where someone had kicked the salt away was fresh. When you lose all your health or willpower, you become impaired. Ah, fuck. If you have 0 art or social and mental task, if you have 0 willpower, harder and sometimes impossible. I felt overwhelmed and confused. What was going on here? Was Olga part of it? How dare they? I let it go. Olga was here just before us. She must have noticed the salt and the broken tombstone. Was she the one who broke the circle? Anya squatted and looked at the plaque. I think that's why she was mad and walking towards me like that, actually. I can't read it. The letters are all wrong. She glanced at Bartek. Is it Russian? I hope I'm pronouncing this right. Belarusian. The same letters, different language. He explained. There were a lot of them here before the war. Bartek put his hands in his pockets. So you don't know anything about your dad's side of the family? He asked me cautiously. Whatever happened at least 70 years ago, and someone still remembers. I don't know them. My mom left my dad when I was just a kid, so I don't remember much, I admitted, and she kept me away from them. She doesn't even know I'm here. I didn't tell her that I was visiting Białowieża. Maybe he was abusive, said Anya carefully. Perhaps she just wanted to protect you. Yeah, I guess. I looked at the grave for the last time. My family name looked strange written in unfamiliar Belarusian letters. As we were leaving, I was thinking. I was onto something. I need to see if I'm pronouncing that right. How to pronounce Bella Russian. Okay, I'm saying that. Okay, cool. Alright. There's something unnatural about my family and me coming to Białowieża. had stirred some old demons. I had just had to find out where my ancestors were doing here and who they were. Um, Bartek wanted to show us the most picturesque spot in the area, said Anya. Maybe that's not the right word, he said, frowning. Well, it's not like that that not like it's that beautiful, but it has, you know, an atmosphere, a climate. Did he mean cool? Do you mean it's cool? I asked. No, I mean it has... Oh god, why is English so hard? Ambience, Bartek smiled, visibly relieved. I meant ambience. We soon left the village behind and ended up on some abandoned railway tracks. So this is where the magic happens. I grinned, pointing at the empty bottles and used condoms strewn along the tracks. But with a slow winding river at a stone's throw away and the long drooping branches of the old trees shading the unused railways, that place really was picturesque. The bees buzzed around us, the birds sang like there was no tomorrow, and the fragrance of herbs hung thick in the air. My head was spinning. Look what I got for us. I reached into my backpack and proudly presented the cold beers I'd bought in the store. The first sip was divine, as always. Can't lose more willpower. So what do you do for fun in your neck of the woods? I teased Bartek. My friend has an ancient Fiat, so sometimes we hotbox it. He shot me an embarrassed smile, and then we start driving around the forest. But why? Anya threw her hands in the air. There's not much else to do, Bartek shrugged. When we entered the dense copse, we noticed a woman standing among the trees. It was Lisa. Hello, Bartek, she said. How did you get here so fast? I couldn't help but ask. There are shortcuts, she didn't elaborate. Hello, Elisabetta, Dana Lavona. Fuck, I can't pronounce that. Answered Bartek. I could hear something in his voice. Was it fear, respect, anger? I couldn't place it. She smiled. Do you mind if I join you? She asked. Sure, I smiled and tossed her a beer. Thanks, and I think I can reciprocate, but we need to find a quiet place. She lifted the basket she was holding in her hand and winked. The path was too narrow for all of us to walk together, so at some point I found myself walking with Lisa. She would squat from time to time and collect some herbs. So you're looking for your roots, she said after a while. Why? What's it to you? I asked back. I could use any help I can get, just as long as there's no strings attached. She laughed a throaty laugh. You're a smart one, aren't you? Sit down with me. She nestled among the roots of an old tree, reached into her basket, and took out a blunt. Let's have a smoke, and I'll tell you a story. She noticed when I hesitated. You need to hear it. Let's smoke some weed. Lisa let out a cloud of smoke and started talking. From what I learned from Bartek's grandma, you're asking the wrong questions about the wrong people. I closed my eyes and I just went with the story. This is a tainted land, girl, she continued. So much blood was spilled that Kuzyaza almost lost her mind. Kuzyaza was one of the words for forest. Polish had lots of those, but she used it in a weird way. Why do you call it the forest Kuzyaza? I'm so pronouncing that wrong. Isn't las the right word? I call her Puzeza because it's her proper name, she huffed. Las is to Puzeza what dog is to wolf. Domesticated, enslaved, used. Puzeza... Puzezia. I need to pronounce it. I want to learn that word too. pronunciation. Pushta. Wow, that pronounced much differently than it looks. I wish they put like one of those little pronunciations like they did with Biovesia. Whoa, Woyevesia. Okay. Pushka is a primeval forest, one untouched by humans, primal, strong, and feared. There is admiration in her voice, and I realized that the words sound like the rustle of leaves, like the wind. Pushka. Oh, well, there's pronunciation. As I was telling you, Pushka also went mad, and it's not wise to wake those spirits, especially not now. No, I admitted, all I know is that my grandfather was born here, and his aunt was a healer and an herbalist. Her eyes lost focus as though she was looking at something only she could see. In 1939, when the war broke out, first came the Germans and the Russians. You know, they actually worked together. Never forgot what he was beaten. Stalin never forgot that he was beaten by the Poles in 1920. She shot me a glance. I didn't really care, but I nodded politely. Oh, you have no idea what I'm talking about. Doesn't matter, really. She took a drag. Anyway, many millions of lives later, Stalin and Hitler stopped sleeping together, so to speak, and the Germans came, and then the Russians again, and then there was the forest soldiers. I nodded so she would continue. The forest part got my attention. They started as Polish soldiers, but then the war ended up and they became guerrillas to fight the Russians' occupation, and then they ended up desperate bandits, she sighed. For the people who lived here, they were all the same. Germans, Russians, forest soldiers. They killed, they maimed, they tortured, and burned villages. Didn't matter what language they spoke. I'm sorry, I touched her arm. I didn't know that it was all so tangled. My great-grandparents were from here, she sighed. After the war, there were some changes and my whole family was sent to Siberia to die. My grandmother was the only one who survived. She met a Buryat shaman, and here I am. But your story is tangled with all this. She looked straight at me. Have you ever wondered what your grandfather did during the war? Then the weed hit me. Man, I'm so high right now. And of course, that was the moment the weed finally hit. That stuff was powerful, and for a moment, I wonder if she had spiked it. I focused and understood that the strange feeling came from within. It was like a long-forgotten dream, like an ancient memory, suddenly brought to life, and I let it in. We are sitting around the fire, deep in Pushka. The orders are sleeping. I listen to the whisper of the leaves. The forest is speaking to me, demanding action. I understand what has to be done, even if I find no joy in it. Soon I will wake the others and tell them the plan. Tomorrow we're going to burn a village. I sit by the fire and listen to the wolves howling to the moon, weeping for their slain brothers and sisters. Then the vision ends. When I came to my senses, Lisa was still looking at me. If I understood what you're asking, I looked at her. Something from my family past cast a shadow on my future. She shrugged. I've told you everything I know. If you want more, talk to my girlfriend. We'll be logging at the site tomorrow. We'll be at the logging site tomorrow. Jesus Christ. I will, I said. Now I finally knew who and what to ask. There you are, Bartek waved to me. I thought I lost you. I think getting to know these people might waken the werewolf in me. I don't know if I want that. Too late now. The B&B was quaint. I left Anya and Bartek outside. They looked like they needed some time alone to say their goodbyes. When I got out of the shower, Anya was back, smiling a little flustered. What a day, she smiled. So what do you think? I made a quick mental inventory of everything that had happened. Scene at the shop. Mention. Something weird happened when I was talking with Lisa. I think it was her joint, but I saw something. It looked like something from the past. Like from your past? For a second I searched for words to explain it to her, but I couldn't really. I think it was my grandpa. It's hard to say. But it was weird. I shrugged, ended the topic. Remember the shop? The tension seemed almost unnatural. A few words and it would be a regular fight. Maybe they just envied Kim's style, Anya tried to joke, but she seemed worried. What happened here? The people are still vandalizing my family's grave. What did my grandfather do? She put a hand on my shoulder. Whatever it was, it's not your fault. It wasn't, but it couldn't be my responsibility. But it could be my responsibility. I can't believe they're logging here. I shook my head. Isn't the forest on a UNESCO list or something? Yeah, I know. I want to check out this want to check this protest people we're talking about. Maybe we could go there tomorrow. You know what? I'm seriously tired. Let's call it a day, shall we? Soon we were both in our beds, ready to sleep. Even though I was tired, sleep didn't come quickly. Anxiety was spreading its cold, withering roots deep in my stomach, chest and stomach. I lay there for some time looking at the silver rectangle painted on the wall by the moonlight. When I closed my eyes, I could still see that weird vision I had that day. My roots were here. I could feel them, almost touch them, and they were reaching out to me. I felt that the answers I was looking for were within my reach. I just had to go and see the logging protest, meet the right people, and make them talk. After a long while, thoughts became blurry. They slowly started to turn into pictures, sounds, and colors. The railroad tracks remember times of their glory. The trees around them whisper about forgotten secrets. I tremble. Something is coming. It's huge and monstrous. I'm a seed. I realize I'm a seed. I float on the air. Then I land in wet soil, die and sprout. My roots will blow up the earth. Oh God. I feel a pull, and I surrender to it. I float towards a clearing. Oh, hello. There are piles of fresh corpses of people who died too young, skinned and mutilated. Their loved ones stand around them, grieving, unable to do anything, waiting, and suddenly they are just trees and tree trunks. I weep, and other voices join me, terrified and hollowed. The trees are dead, and I'm here to help console their spirits. There is a stench in the air, like meat rotting in acid, but somehow worse. See the monstrous army. Their mandibles are whirling chainsaws. Their long metal arms are wrapped with black pipes that look like glistening intestines. Their smell is vile, and they wait unmoving. I go to the dead trees, kneel next to them. Words come to me in language that I don't remember, but that I know. Words about revenge and death and sacrifice. And then my voice tells me to look at the sky. There, between the stars, two shapes circle each other. An old sad wolf with gray hair and a white weasel. They keep their eyes on one another as they continue their dance, suspicious, but not hostile. We need to fight the enemy, the awful, rotting stench that I know so much. I know that much. But how can we do that when we don't trust each other? They stop. They look at me in the clearing. I spill my blood and bless them with words that I do not recognize, but I understand. They came, they come down to me, and their voice is the voice of Pushka. Welcome back. You've been away for too long of a time. I wake up. The next morning was full of sunshine and birdsong. I could smell the heat of the afternoon building, those long, honey-like hours in late June when the earth isn't tired of its own warmth yet, but it was crisp and pleasant now. I sat on my bed for a moment, letting my feet dangle from it. I felt overwhelmed. The weight of the previous day had coiled up somewhere in my chest, and I didn't really know what to think about everything I learned. There was a dream. Then I remembered the dream, the clearing, the animals in the night sky waiting for me. I took a shower, ate something without really paying attention, and went out. Anya joined me. As I walked towards the logging site, I noticed there were more people heading that way. A police car, a couple SUVs, a TV truck, young people on bicycles, a green Land Rover from the Forest Services. When I got to the site, it felt utterly surreal, like I'd step onto a movie set. Anya looked around. So what's the plan? Need to find someone. There was someone I had to find and press for answers. I want to talk to Olga from the cemetery. She knows something about my family. I looked around. On my right was the ancient forest. On my left was freshly torn clearing ahead of me. Ruining the view were huge logging machines and a group of people arguing in their shadow. I thought the machines were sucking the life out of the air, like they were a wound, not just a piece of equipment. The trees had cut down lay in the middle, thrown together, lifeless, limp, just like the dream. Surrounded them were the harvesters that killed them, and people who squabbled over their corpses, the protesters, the reporters, the police, and of course the loggers. The harvesters loomed over the clearing, reeking. Olga was arguing with a man in his 30s who looked vaguely military. The protesters were clearly conflicted. I thrived in solving conflicts, so I went closer. One of the police officers, young and nervous, said something I didn't fully understand. I smiled at him and said, "I don't understand," in my best Polish. He smiled back. "Oh," he said, "you're one of them," and then let us go. Then I noticed that someone joined us. Then I noticed that someone used the commotion to sneak with us past the police. A girl with disheveled, bleached out hair. "Don't worry," she patted the officer on the arm. It was an awful pickup line anyway. He recoiled. You shouldn't touch me, ma'am." I smiled at her and wanted to say something, but I was interrupted. "Pat," some guy called her from the gathering. "Could you come here? I need you to show Olga that chart." She sighed, reaching to her backpack and taking out the tablet. "And they're at it again." She murmured under her breath and winked at me. "Coming." We went towards the activist. See how I'm doing over here. We're scared of my family. My grandfather was a forest soldier after World War II, and I'm afraid that he did something terrible at the time. People protesting the logging clearly knew something about my family. I should go talk to them. Loyal, friendly, it's complicated, sympathetic. Okay. As I walked toward Olga, I heard more and more of the argument. "Olga, you can't." The man was speaking with a strong German accent. Pat stood next to him with her tablet. She looked a bit amused. "Do not fucking tell me what I can or can't do, Colonel." Olga interrupted. "I can because they are destroying our mother. I fight with all the means at my disposal, even if that means burning those harvesters to the ground." A slender, green-eyed man was standing near her. He took a few steps back, went towards one of the harvesters, turned his back on all of us, and pissed on the machine. Olga smirked. "Oh, Daniel, you know how to bring the point home." He looked at her confused. Burn the harvesters? Cornel asked calmly. In this drought? Olga, are you out of your mind? You know what I mean. We fight them any way we can because this is a fucking war. She spar. He sighed. You've never seen a real war and it shows. Nobody is shooting at us and believe me, we want it to stay that way. We need a peaceful protest. Hi, we need to talk, I said, approaching Olga. Listen, I'm in the middle of something. Can we talk later? In the middle of something, normally I would wait for them to finish, but it was important. I looked at them both, Olga with her fury and passion, Cornel with his cool professional demeanor, and shared without any reservation what I felt about the situation. Why would I mock them both? There's a fine line to tread, I sighed, in silence. In the silence. You don't want the protesters to be painted as terrorists, and you don't want them to be treated as irrelevant and ignored. Kim shook her head and moved forward. Olga, darling, you know I love you, but Cornel really knows what he's doing. Please trust me on that one. They looked at her apologetically. Fuck off, Kim. You didn't even trust me enough to come here on your own when I asked you to. Lisa looked them straight in the eye. Kim, you want to teach me about violence? She looked them straight in the eye. How about fighting oppression just because your boss went to, what, one mission in Afghanistan? Her Polish was peculiar, kind of mellow. Cornel winced. Lisa, leave Kim alone. He didn't know what to say, and it seemed that the whole discussion would be derailed. Hey guys, the forest, I said, the logging, the protest. Olga unclenched her fist. Cornel looked back at her and chuckled softly. You almost punched me. The conversation was over, at least for the time being. Cornel, together with his cronies, walked towards a reporter while Olga went back to the group of people standing in the shadow of an oak tree. I looked at the forest. Pushka is sympathetic. I looked at Pushka. The clearing full of felled trees was like a gaping, bleeding wound in the chest of an old friend. I had to do something. Uh-oh. I looked at my friend. We have to stop this logging. Yes, just like Olga said, Anya nodded, excited. What they are doing is unforgivable, and we have to fight. It is a very complicated situation. Bartek looked thoughtful. I liked what the guy Cornel said, that we should proceed peacefully, not to discourage the public and potential supporters. Let's do this peacefully. Get the support of the people. As I approached the group, Kim waved at me. Come here. They took me straight to the leader of the group, the man who was arguing with Olga. Hey, Maya, he said. I see you haven't come alone. He reached out his hand. I heard you talking, I said earnestly, and I think you were right. Was I? I couldn't tell if he was amused or flattered. His eyes were an uncanny shade of gray. He might have been in his early 30s, I thought. But there was more to him than his pretty bad boy attitude. I wasn't sure what it was, but I felt it. And he knew that I knew. Cornel looked at me in his eyes. I know why you came to Białowieża. The forest is reaching out to you because for a long time your ancestors were its servants, and now you're the only one left to pay what they owed. I looked at him, skeptical, but he seemed to believe it. The important question is, he looked at me intensely, you want to help? But before I could answer, I heard a commotion and turned around. The reporters were coming our way, but their cameras were switched off and pointed at the ground. I ignored them and turned back to Cornel. There was a way we could use the media. The media needed something spectacular. I think we should spin the media, I said, and make the headlines. That's the plan, he nodded and turned to the reporter. So, he asked. There was a hint of impatience in his voice. The reporter shook his head and grimaced. Sorry, everyone, we can't do anything. We're not allowed to cover what's going on here. What do you mean? You aren't allowed? Who said so? I wasn't sure if I understood his Polish properly. The reporter shrugged. The people who can send an officer your way who'll kindly ask you to hand over your memory card, or else. Go figure, girl. There was a moment of tense silence, and then it all came together. Suddenly, I understood the dream. That was the moment I was destined to intervene. The protest was too quiet. They needed inspiration. Just had to make the reporters understand. We could use... Still use... I looked at the protesters. They were a ragtag bunch thrown together by circumstance without a real plan or clear purpose. I looked around, put my hands in my pockets, and wandered towards the journalists. Hello, everyone, I said. Can one of you bum me a cigarette by any chance? There are 4 packets offered and twice as many lighters. I took a Marlboro, lit it, and flashed my biggest, broadest smile at them. Unspectacular as it was, I managed to connect. Does it always look like this? I asked. I mean, is it an everyday situation that you can't report? No, answered one of them. He was tall, in his 30s. There were a few glances towards him, almost flashed a warning, but it was too late. But why were they in Białowieża at all? Wait, so why are you all here at all? I asked, and then it hit me. You were sent here to find some dirt on the activists, to get something that would compromise the protest. Cunning. They looked at one another, then shrugged as if a decision had been made. Okay, what do you have for us? One of the reporters said, turning to Cornell. I want you to meet Dr. Patricia Mears, he said, presenting the somber woman with short, bleached-out hair. She's wearing all black. She's a specialist in endangered species and has something very interesting to share with you. Pat approached the reporters. Please take a look at this map, she requested, holding a tablet in her slim, pale hand. I felt Cornell's gaze, and when I looked at him, he slightly inclined his head. There were distant shouts in the background as Olga and her crowd clashed with the police, but most of the reporters didn't even notice. I relaxed. Someone patted me on the shoulder. Well done, bravo. It was Kim. They looked around to check if anyone here was watching us. This is when you exit the scene. They turned me around and gently but firmly pushed me away. We'll be in touch, they whispered. When I was on the road to the village, nobody could see me. I doubled over and vomited. I always felt violently sick when there was too much to process at once. On the whole commotion, I lost Anya and Bartek from my sight. I was alone. Or I thought. Well, you had it coming, a voice behind me said as I jumped. The woman looked at me. I was fine. I'm fine, I said stiffly. She rummaged in her pocket and handed me a handkerchief. Here, she said, I have water as well if you need some. We walked slowly towards the village. We talked. I learned that she was an independent German reporter who had come here a month ago. Her name was Erica. So why are you here protesting the logging? She asked after a few minutes. Hi, Alicia. I think the Pushka hat is unique. When I saw how many trees they've cut in just one afternoon, it broke my heart, I said, still shaken by the sheer numbers of the fallen trees. I had to do whatever I can to save the forest. I looked at her. And why are you asking? Do you know why they are cutting down the trees? She asked back. Because you do know that the logging is done by the government company, the state forest. But why are they doing this? I wasn't sure if I understood. Shouldn't the state forest take care that the forest was healthy? It all started with the spruce bark beetles. Erica looked into her notes and started explaining the whole situation. The year the beetles infestation was of catastrophic proportions, and the foresters decided that the only way to stop it and save the rest of the forest was to cut down the many infested trees as fast as possible. Maybe if they removed the dead trees, the infestation wouldn't spread. I tried to find a solution. They might do that, but dead trees are what make the forest unique, Erica smiled. There are 20 times more species living on a dead spruce tree than a live one. But is logging legal? I want to know. Opinions differ, but such massive logging is a UNESCO listed in a I don't know what that is. UNESCO listed area might be illegal, Erica answered. Is cutting down trees the only way to stop the infestation? I asked, confused. The foresters state that this is the only way, she asked. Some biologists argue that they are cutting the wrong trees and doing it too late to change anything. Couldn't they just leave the pushka alone and let nature take its course? I asked. That's one of the options, Eric admitted, but there's a drought, and no one is sure if the forest would survive on its own. It was a complex situation, but that didn't mean that I should step back. And I felt that Eric was deliberately playing the devil's advocate. I'm not sure what to think about it, I admitted. We really used your advice. I'm just doing my job, Erica shrugged. I described all the aspects of the situation to you, but it's up to you to decide what you want to do. She was putting herself in such a convenient position. Unfortunately, I could just pretend that it wasn't my business. At least I was sure if they were cutting down the trees and the pushka needed my help. Do you really think that you can walk through life just presenting facts and not taking sides? I asked, laughing. Yes, that's what I do, Erica answered. It doesn't work for me, I shook my head. When I'm just an observer, I'm not changing anything. She looked skeptical. You're not the only one feels You're not the only one feeling helpless, she sighed. So don't let the complexity of the situation stop you. Life is always complex and yet we carry on. So what should I do when I feel that something is wrong? I asked, exasperated. Do you believe that people can be evil? She asked back. Some people do really shitty things, I shrugged. But it's just their actions. Is it just their actions or their nature? I said nothing. What's the matter? She asked. Something wasn't right with the whole situation. I didn't know what it was, and that scared me. I took a deep breath, and I remembered what Cornell had said. They said I have some family debts to pay. I shook my head. It's a lot to take in, and there was that foul smell back there. She looked at me with a weird expression. What smell? I asked. Oh, what smell? She asked. You didn't smell it? The harvesters reeked of something like meat that's been rotting in acid, only worse. I couldn't even find the words to describe it, but the memory of the foulness still clung to the back of my throat, swimming in my sinuses. She looked at me with a strange expression on her face, as though she wanted to say something, and then thought better of it. There was sympathy in her eyes. You'll learn it in your own time if you stay here long enough, she said, clearly wanting to drop the topic. I shrugged. Cryptic remarks never did anything for me. The situation was complicated enough as it was. I just hoped I hadn't made things worse. When I opened the door, I found Anya and Bartek sitting on Anya's bed. They were a little flustered and were nonchalantly trying to look like I hadn't interrupted anything. We lost sight of you, Bartek said apologetically. I'm glad you made it back in one piece. So how was your day? Anya asked. I had a nice chat with the reporters, I grinned, and I learned a thing or two. Anya frowned. I heard that you can't trust them. Bartek nodded. Of course not. They're... He looked for a word. They're hyenas. I never said I did. I winked. Did you know that the government supported the logging even when it was illegal? I shared my dismay. If they support it, it can't be illegal. Bartek crossed his arms. Of course it can. I threw my arms up, frustrated. I met some very interesting people, I said, still excited. Yeah, but they look like a colorful bunch, Anya grinned. Bartek rolled his eyes. Colorful and uninvited. They sure are passionate. They argue between themselves and more than they argue with the loggers, I added. You may have a point, Bartek, I admitted. I barged in and tried to solve problems that I might not yet understand. It's cool, he smiled. This whole business is a mess. I shrugged. Just another day in Białowieża. We sat for a while in silence. You know, there's more to see here than Białowieża, Bartek said to me. You should visit Pogorzelski, Budi, Taramiski, and Sri Lanka. Oh yeah, Sri Lanka. See the open air museum and the bison. The logging is not all that happens here. I'd love to see it all, I sighed, and I'll do that as soon as the situation with Puska is resolved. And how is the searching for your roots going? Asked Bartek, clearly wanted to change the topic. It seems that my ancestors lived around the forest for a long time, I said, and there were some kind of debts to be paid. Wow, Anya looked impressed. Honestly, I'm not sure what to think of it, but if you need something, just let me know. I just sat there, looking through the window. The day had been full on and I was exhausted. It's quiet now, yet I know deep down inside that something isn't right. I'm sneaking through the forest to the logging site. It's getting dark. The light seeps away through there, as though there are millions of tiny punch holes in the sky, which it can escape. Then the darkness starts to pour in. I know what I will see. And I see bodies strewn across the ground, bloodied, maimed, and their limbs torn from destroyed torsos. I can see some of them are still alive, still struggling for air, still trying to live. They are all trees, fallen trees, still alive, struggling for air. I can smell them. The stench is dark, rancid, putrid. There are monsters at the edge of the forest. They have long skeletal arms. They are wrapped in glistening black intestines, and each arm has a wide, gaping mandible full of whirling blades. They snap at me blindly. I turn around and see the forest move. They have thorns, they have antlers, their eyes shine in the dark, and they are ready. I watch them charge, lunging at the monsters, falling prey to the snapping teeth. I feel their anger wash over me, fill me with rage, and I want to join them. Only when I know the enemy's weakness do I strike. I move unseen, unstoppable, breaking necks, tearing at arteries, ending lives, and I am the only one laughing. I gasped and bolted. Upright. I was alone. The sun was setting, and in deep red light, the room looked like it was bathed in blood. My pillow and duvet were on the ground, and I was sweating bullets. I looked at my legs. When did they become so hairy? I could have sworn I shaved them that morning. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. I need to talk. I thought about going back to sleep, but I couldn't. Since I'd arrived in this village, I felt I was falling down a rabbit hole. Or rather, a wolf's den. My dreams were getting more and more vivid, and I was scared. I needed to talk it over with someone I trusted. God, I'm growing a fucking beard over here. I'd come here with Anya, and despite all the strange things I'd done, she still stuck with me. I messaged her, and she messaged me back. I'm on a walk, come join me. The sun had just set, and the moon wasn't up yet. The forest loomed on the horizon. The activist camps was somewhere there. We met near the shop in Białowieża. It was a characteristic enough point, and easy to get from anywhere in town. What is it? Anya asked. She looked worried. I know it sounds crazy, but I think something strange is happening to me. I'm scared, Anya. There's something strange happening? She nodded. There is something strange happening. She nodded, but I have no idea what it is. I know even less than you, she frowned. Maybe we should go to your new friends, the activists. They, she smiled a little. They are weird. They must know something. I smiled. That's why I came to you. You have the best ideas. She smiled and started walking. Let's go. I'm sure they're not asleep. Do you mind if I text Bartek? I promise I'd meet him tonight. I didn't mind, and he'd soon join us. The camp had a different vibe than the logging site protest. There were more people. We looked around trying to take it all in. The people in the camp seemed quite cheerful. There were tents, and I could smell some bacon in the air. People were milling about, setting up camps, singing, preparing posters. It was a joint effort. Oh god. My stomach growled. I was hungry. I have no idea what your plan is, said Bartek, but you have my full support. Hello, I said. I approached Cornell. As I approached, Cornell smiled at me. Hello, he said. What brings you here? I shrugged and dug my hands deeper into my pockets of my jeans. I have so many questions about myself, the forest, and the logging. Cornell looked at me with those uncanny gray eyes. I could feel as if his attention was locked on me. Okay, he said. Join us. And you'll understand. We're here to stop what's happening, to show what we don't agree, and that we hope to make a difference. Will it work? I asked. I don't know. All I know is that it worked before. It worked for Gandhi. It worked for segregation and apartheid in the end. It worked with communism, so let's see if it works with capitalism as well. Violence is not an option here. He smiled, and I think you know quite well that anger doesn't really get shit done. I smiled back. Somehow being around him made me feel more relaxed. I know you can count on me, I answered. I know, you can count on me, I answered. I had a family debt to pay, and I couldn't be just an observer anymore. So we may have a little citizen protest going on tonight, Cornell said, but I'll need your support if we want to convince the others. I voted for the peaceful protest, and soon we were on our way to the National Park headquarters and education center. We had some banners to install. Bartek hesitated for a long time, but he joined us in the end. I'm only coming because my dad is out tonight, and he won't see me coming in late, he mumbled. This is so exciting, Anya whispered. I've never done anything so illegal. As we were on our way, I realized that we followed the path only because of my vote. I made a difference. The National Park headquarters were located in something called Palace Park. The name, like everything in Poland, was historical. Centuries ago, some king had his hunting lodge there. But now it was a mishmash of old and new buildings scattered around the park. Some were rough and bulky, made of stone and brick, while others were an extravaganza of wooden porches, lace-like shutters, and meticulously sculpted pillars. There was no one around, but the area was well lit. Needed to be careful. This wasn't your everyday act of vandalism. This was something bigger, more important, yes, but also more dangerous. Getting arrested in Poland didn't seem like a great way to start my visit. In fact, it could be the end to it. Suddenly I remembered the church located just next to the Palace Park gate. I could feel its dark silhouette looming in the darkness, waiting. They spent the whole day painting the sign on a length of material sewn together from what looked like old sheets that were various shades of grayish white. The old dark green letters declared, "Wood is the enemy of the forest." What? Wood is... oh. I get it. Where do we hang it? I asked. asked Daniel, who'd come with climbing gear. Cornell joined him and they started deliberating on the best way to approach the problem. Sure, take your time, we have the whole night. It's not like anyone might pass by any minute, I hurried them. Doesn't matter, Olga said, because hanging the banner is a waste of time. I looked at her, curious of what kind of advice she would offer. Olga looked at me as though she expected me to say something, but I didn't take the bait. It's a great banner, I'm sure it would look good on the pictures published by a number of independent political blogs. Looked at Cornell, but it's stuck so deep into the overeducated ecological dispute that people won't get it, and the loggers won't care. Cornell sighed and shook his head. Don't get involved with them, said Pat, leaning towards me. Why? I asked, intrigued. Are you two together? No, not in the way you think, at least. She had a weird expression on her face. Was she jealous? What was her relationship with Cornell anyway? Never mind, she said. Really, it's just, you won't be here long. Oh. Okay. Well, maybe you're right, I sighed. Maybe I invest too much in this protest. I wish I could stay longer. What I meant was that you shouldn't follow Cornell blindly, she said, and for a moment I felt we were on the brink of something dangerous. The moment passed. But Pat couldn't stay serious for too long. Suddenly she pointed up, Look, Daniel, Daniel turned into a squirrel. I lifted my gaze for a moment. The silhouette against the white wall really looked like a giant squirrel with a bushy tail climbing up quickly. And then I realized it was the shadow of the rope. Pat, I snorted, and we started to laugh. Finally, we pulled the banner up. My father will have a stroke when he sees us, Bartek let out a repressed laugh. An important message. Anya looked up with the fire in her eyes. The world must know. I looked at the sign, flying high over the park. I was proud of our work. When we finished, Cornell gathered us together. I was proud of what we'd accomplished, and that I contribute to it. Whatever my family had done, I was starting to pay back the debt. Cornell reached for his bicycle. Let's go for a trip, he said, to remind ourselves what we're trying to protect. Looked sketchy. Pushka is sympathetic. The woods were full of stars. We cycled in silence, enjoying the company of the forest as it enjoyed ours. At some point, a clearing opened up before us. It was surrounded by boulders placed in a circle. They looked relaxed. A soft breeze rustled in the trees, welcoming us. There's something eerie about the place, I cleared mine and inhaled. There was some kind of energy there, flowing around, trying to reach me, but it couldn't, not without permission. You guys feel that? I looked at my companies, but before anyone could answer, a loud sound tore through the silence. It was a gunshot. A gunshot. Anya gasped, looking around, wide-eyed and terrified. The others tensed up, but they didn't look concerned, just confused. We have to get out of here immediately, Bartek whispered, was frantic and scared. There's a hunting party out here. Arnold turned toward us, like he finally put something together. There was a rustle, and I saw a bunch of men in camo, each of them with a rifle, coming towards us. I watched their angry steps, listened to the murmured curses. Something was strangely familiar. The man at the front looked exactly like an older version of Bartek. He weighed us up for a moment, then focused on Cornell. This area is closed for the night, the huntsman said in Polish. There was a contempt in his voice. There's a hunt going on, and y'all are trespassing. We have police officers here, so I would go home if I were you, unless you want to get arrested. Why? You told my cat. You told my cat. The man's hands were sweaty, his stance off balance. I could trip him in a split second if I tried. This man, I realized, was no one. He wasn't important here. What was important was that the forest and what it needed. And if it cared about me, and didn't want me to get hurt, there'd be other knights and other people to fight. But right then, I felt that it wanted me to leave. I ran, the air in my lungs boiling, my skin slick with sweat. In the darkness thick around me, Anya and Bartek were running just behind us, or so I hoped. We left the shouts and the gunshots long behind us, but we couldn't stop. Something was chasing us. Two silhouettes, one lean, the other bulky. I saw them in the corner of my eye as they leaped forward. At first, I thought they were people, but then, as they leaped, they got longer and smaller. I couldn't see clearly. It was dark. Sweat was blinding me, and they were hiding behind the trees. I heard howling and growling, and then I saw there were wolves chasing us. I stopped in the middle of the path and turned to face the animals. They were predators, and I saw no gain in playing the part of their prey. "What are you doing?" whispered Anya, terrified of Bartek, grabbing her wrist and pulled her off the path. I looked at the wolves. They looked at me. I felt strangely connected to them. I heard a rustle in leaves, and then there was a voice in my head. My little Ragabash. I knew that it was the Pushka, and that she was pleased with me. I also knew that Ragabash meant shadow. "You're looking for me?" I asked, hoping that my nonchalance would confuse them. The wolves dispersed, and then something happened. Something that I couldn't see clearly. And two people stepped out of the bush. I knew both of them. "Wait, she has the right to know." Cornell grabbed Olga's arm. "One of us is going to bite you," she said, a matter of fact. "Then you will die." Cornell added, "One way or another, it runs in your family." There was a series of wet cracks, like skin breaking, torn from within by muscles that suddenly grew, by bones rapidly getting longer, by fur, teeth, and claw. When I dared to look, I saw two 8-foot-tall monsters standing in front of me on a narrow path in the forest. Everything finally clicked. I fucking knew it. The pain was unbearable. Nothing in my life had prepared me for this. Blinded by the blood in my eyes and the searing pain in my shoulder and chest, I could only laugh. This wasn't what I'd expect from this trip. You spend so much time planning, and only to see your whole life crash and burn. All I could do was laugh. So I laughed, grinning with bloody teeth until my strength left me and I couldn't hold myself upright. The forest caught my fall with a bed of moss and twigs. I stopped thrashing and a cold numbness engulfed me. I punched the earth, trying to get some feeling in my hands. I gritted my teeth and tried to get up. I collapsed again. I felt so cold. Suddenly there was a light. I looked up. The full moon. It looked different. The moon was a goddess, and she noticed me. "Get up," she said. I get up. I feel good. I know that I shouldn't, but I don't remember why. Don't care. My mind is clear. My mind is clearer than it's ever been before. I see the world in sharp contrast to black and white. Movement and stillness. I smell prey. I hear language in the hooting of owls, the whistling of the wind, and the snarling of wolves. I am what I was born to be. My muscles are sore and cramped, so I stretch like I've never stretched before. My arms are longer, my legs are stronger, and my heart is pumping, and I feel like I spent my whole life packed into a box, and I've finally been set free. I take a breath, and I feel my ribs and muscles move. The forest smells of blood and fear and excitement. I laughed happily, and others' laughter joined me. We laugh and sing to the moon. Something stings me. Look around. There's a small malformed creature pointing a stick at me. The stick blazes with fire, and there's another sting. The creature disgusts me. Its arms are too short, and its legs behind bend the wrong way. It's covered with a tangled mass of dead plants and the skins of tortured animals. It reeks of dark and slimy and decayed. I push the creature away and it flies through the air, making a funny noise. Then it hit a tree and stayed there, pinned to a branch like a butterfly. My ears prick, and I hear more creatures running blindly through the bush. My legs no longer sting, and I feel better than before. Maybe it's a dream, I think, as I move slightly through the undergrowth. The creatures are running away, their backs turned to me, they stumble and shout. Suddenly one of them turns my way, is terrified. I look at it, and the creature curls up, shielding its face with its paws. It keeps talking, but the noises make no sense. It annoys me, but I ignore it and move on. Piercing light burns my eyes. The creatures surround me. They seem to work like a pack. They are dangerous. I hide in the shadows, and they are too slow and too dumb. Too clueless to notice me. I strike them down one by one. Some manage to defend themselves briefly, but most of them don't see me coming. I look up and see no moon, only clouds and tangled branches. Changes. Something changed, and I realized how tired I was. I stumbled. Because I'm reading something. The night sky was full of stars. Confused, I opened my eyes. The forest around me was thick and dark. The tree trunks wrapped tightly in dark leaves, ivy, were covered in ripples of lichen where the vines hadn't taken hold. The thorny, leafless bushes at their base were overrun with nettles. The fungi radiated with a ghoulish, sickly green light. Dark, sponge-like mushrooms clung to the fallen tree. I knew it was summer, but I felt cold. Where were my clothes? I looked down and saw my hands covered in a dark substance. I was naked. A stickily glistening film of liquid was clinging to my skin. I could feel it on my face, in my hair, and blood. I crouched down and planted my palms on the soil, my eyes darting back and forth. I was being watched. I remembered my dream, and so lifted my eyes. There was a severed head right in front of me. The face was contorted, the eyes bulging, the mouth open, the tongue stuck out. It was obscene, doubled over retching. I recognized the face. It was one of the hunters, the one that had tried to stop me. The head watched me with reproach. I crumpled and curled into a ball, sobbing quietly. The bushes rustled, and a moment later I saw Cornell coming out from between the trees. He looked at me, at the head, at my face. He came closer and squatted behind me, beside me. "This is what we were trying to tell you." His gray eyes smiled. "See, you're a werewolf." I looked at him. I blinked. I gotta piss again. The morning smelled of safety, fur, earth, and the open forest, and the forest. I opened my eyes and saw other people cuddling up to me, their muzzles resting on their paws as they slept. Gentle snoring filled the warm space under the low-hanging branches of an old spruce tree. Quietly, so as not to wake anyone, I crawled outside alone, hiding in the tall grass. I sniffed around. The sky was bright, and the forest around me was dark and full of interesting smells. High in the trees, birds yelled about status, sex, and violence. Something wasn't right. My brain wasn't working as it should. The smells were too strong, the grass was too tall. There was a quality I couldn't recall that was missing. From the view in front of my eyes, a creature stirred in the bush nearby, a tall, dark silhouette, a strangely familiar smell. I ran before they noticed me, and by the time they realized, I already had a head start. Shit, Maya, wait, they shouted. We have to talk. I looked back over my shoulder and saw a pack of wolves chasing me through the clearing. The headless body was heavy. They said that as my first kill, it was my burden. It was my duty to take it to the burrows. I got my shit together, lifted the corpse, and threw it over my shoulder. We are Garu. When we rage, people die. Olga stood by my side. He had it coming. She accompanied me, carrying the severed head in a bag. The others stayed behind, covering the tracks. I don't want to talk or to think, for that matter. Not about the person I was carrying, or rather, trying to carry. It was just a thing I needed to transport from point A to point B. I kept dragging the body, but the burden was too much to bear. I was tired and hurt, and I just couldn't do it anymore. I looked at the body, and I really wanted to say something, but I choked on my words. I curled into a ball with my arms around my head. I can't, I said, and then it was the only thing I could say, louder and louder until it became a shriek. I can't, I can't, I can't, I can't. Olga sighed and kneeled beside me. You're a werewolf, Gaia's soldier. There's nothing you can do about it. Get up, we have a world to save, and you have a legacy to fulfill and a debt to pay. I took a deep breath. They were right. I was here for a reason. I had things to do. I tried really, but I couldn't. It was frustrating as trying to take a shit when you're constipated. It doesn't work, I said, frustrated. Why doesn't it work? They looked me up and down, not surprised at all, and sighed. Sorry about this. About what? The slap to my face was all the answers I needed. I was Glabro, the near-human form. The pain was stronger than I ever imagined. I felt muscle spasms as it rearranged himself. My jaw cracked and my mouth filled with blood. I clenched my fists and claws drove into my palms. I screamed. When I rose, panting and sweaty, I was more than human. I was Glabro. Wolfish, strong, and scary. The change hurt more than I expected. The world shifted, not much, but enough. I felt my teeth get sharper and muscles stronger. I picked up the body, it was a lot lighter. As we made out our way through the forest, I realized we weren't alone. Somehow I knew what I'd seen before I saw it. A white weasel and a dark gray wolf. Ah, my companion smiled. See, you've noticed our patrons. Yeah, we know each other, I said, remembering my dream. We sort of met the other night. Two animals stopped in front of me in the middle of the path. We came here to teach the cub, said the wolf. She smelled of ash and tears. I couldn't believe what I saw. It made no sense. It felt as if my brain was short-circuiting, trying to interpret signals not meant for humans. My eyes told me there was a wolf staring at me, but when I looked at it, I felt ash on my tongue. I heard a mourning howl so deep it reverberated in my bones, and I smelled fire. And when it talked, it was like a rustling of leaves forming words in my mind. But hallucinations or not, they wouldn't leave me alone. The weasel circled me, and before I knew it, I could feel small claws on my legs, and then on my back, and then on my arm. It smelled of musk and electricity, and then it bit my ear. Ow, I shouted. Why would you do that? To see how you'd react, obviously. The weasel's electronic voice echoed in my head. Enough, the wolf growled. Well, at least that was what my brain decided to hear. In the beginning, there was Gaia, aka Mother Earth, and she gave birth to a mighty breed of warriors, the weasel began. It sounded electronical, like a teenager reading a Wikipedia page over a voice chat. They were called Garu. That's werewolves and werewolfish. And their sole purpose was to protect Gaia. They failed, wailed the wolf. Why did they fail? I looked to the weasel for advice. When time began, Gaia released three primal forces upon the earth. The weaver, the willed, and the worm. The weasel continued. The willed was the untamed force of life and creation. The cold, ruthless weaver gave structure to the world. The worm destroyed what needed to be destroyed, creating balance. So, were werewolves creatures of the weaver, I asked, enforcing order? They were Gaia's children, the wolf snarled, born to herd and contain humans. I can see that something went wrong, I smiled wearily. The weavers grew two ambushes and trapped the worm within a lifeless web. The weasel answered, confined and denied the worm went slowly insane. Now Gaia is dying, choked by the weaver, and eaten alive by the worm. Wailed the wolf. And you must sometimes fight the weaver, it said with a sad voice, but usually you can reason with its servants. Then it turned and led the way. It didn't look much different than other parts of the forest until you noticed the mounds, that is, and there was something about the flattened earth that drew my full attention. A memory stirred in my mind. No, it wasn't a memory. It was a fleeing anchored in my chest, akin to the taste of ash in my mouth and the smell of smoke, longing, sadness, resignation. A sense of sacredness, it filled with a calm excitement, and when I closed my eyes, I saw fire burning in the darkness. Olga kneeled near one of the mounds, put the hand on it, and whispered for a few words. I saw the ground open slowly, like a mouth in the earth. I sighed. Let's do this. We took the severed head and the body I'd wrap up in the sheets and put them in the hole. It closed slowly, and I could swear I heard the trees nearby sigh in anticipation. The wolf howled, and I could feel the hair on my hands rise. Welcome to your new life. The talking white weasel grinned. We have something to show you. I had so many questions and finally dared to ask them. Olga was already turning away when I stopped her. I have a question. So how do you and Cornell meet? I asked. Why do you need to know? Olga watched me for a moment, then started talking. We met in Berlin, fought the worm together. We were in the same pack, it fell apart. That's all you need to know. Enough talking, the White Weasel grinned, and we have much to do. It was hard to find the place of power, although I knew where it was. After I stepped on yet another sharp stone, I gave up in any false pretense and let my animal side take over. I was Lupus, the wolf form. I doubled down in pain. My arms and legs cracked and twisted. My skull fractured and reset itself in a different shape. Fragments of bone crawled under the skin. My skin was rippling and sprouting fur. I howled in agony. When the pain subsided, I was a Lupus, a wolf seeing the world in smells and sounds. I felt Pushka playing with me, twisting past, blocking my way with bushes and dead trees, and then suddenly opening a new path that was straight, full of sunshine. Determined, I pushed on. The forest was different when I was running on four legs. Path shifted and was once a blockade was now an opening. Smells were my guide, and more efficient than human eyes. The smell of ash and old blood, bone and stones. Then I was there. There it was, the place of power, stones in a circle, old apple trees a buzzing in the air. I opened my mind. There is a swirl. It starts deep within me and then it expands. Everything is in motion and there is no center anymore. There's a bird flying higher and higher. There's a wolf. Her howl is like a keen. She keens after me when I fall. She mourns my blood that spills on the ground. Yet another of her cubs lost. And balanced with this life, this death, it whispers to me. Little trees grow from where my eyes have been. Snail lives in my open mouth. Life goes on. Squirrels hide their acorns between my ribs. Seasons pass. The acorns grow and turn into oak trees. Years go by. And then there is no more of me. And no more forest. There's only us. Us who work together, hand in hand, cleaning the fallen trees, protecting the standing ones, healing the damages, building the roads, breathing the air, hiding under trees from the burning sun. But this path is just one of many. We just try to live in peace, but there is no time to enjoy that. There is no common ground between us and civilization. Only no man's land that none of us dare to cross. They stand there with their machines while we retreat to fight another day. They reek of the stench of worm. There is anger burning there, slowly turning into rage. There is tension and the howling of a wolf. The ash-gray wolf stands in front of me. Do you understand what you have to do? She asked. I understand what I have to do, I said. There are many paths in front of me and I have to choose the right one. The future can still change, I realize. It depends on our choices. Fight is the only righteous path, child. The wolf shook her head. It's in your blood. She looked me in the eyes. No compromise. Be my teeth, be my claws, be my rage. Kill them all. Save the forest. I looked at her, and perhaps for the first time I saw her for what she was. Her pelt was marred with fire. Her eyes were smoking embers. Ash was falling from her heaving flanks. She looked old, ancient, sad, and alone. And that top thing? Top row? She was, she was the very idea of mourning made flesh. What? What kind of gloves are you looking at?
What?
She was the very idea of mourning made flesh, driven by a feeling of loss so profound that it burned everything in its wake. But she was more than that. She was also the spirit of the forest, Lapushka herself, wounded, hurt, violated, and mourning all of her children that human had killed. At least that was what I thought when I looked at her. The wolf mother looked back at me, and something in her eyes made me realize that she was helping my family for generations, and that my family used to serve her. Join me, she pleaded. Only you can understand me. Only you. I took a step back, then another, and another. I turned away, and I chose my own path. Do not fool yourself, the wolf cried. There is no choice. There never was. A lone howl pierced the silence like a single ray of moonlight in the darkness. Then there was another, and then another, and then another. A choir of voices, triumphant and joyful. When I opened my eyes, I was in clearing. Around me there were wolves, huge monstrous wolves, howling at the moon. In a moment of bittersweet reflection, I understood that my old life was over. Maya the student was a part of the past. My present, my future was now forever linked to what happened in the forest. Well, hello there, Cornell smiled at me and welcome to the sept. I realized that my survival depended on learning very quickly, so I just nodded and listened. For a werewolf, the pack is family, Cornell explained, and an alliance of packs united in a common goal is a sept. I realized that there must be at least two packs here. A great gray-eyed wolf changed into Cornell, and soon Pat and Kim joined him. We are the Winter Weasel pack, said Kim. A white shadow settled on Pat's shoulder. I smelled musk and electricity. Three of the monsters wolves changed. Olga, Lisa, and Lisa stood up, human-looking again, their clothes rumpled. A yellow-eyed wolf by their side turned out to be Daniel. We are the Morning Wolf Mother, said Olga. They smelled of ash and tears, and for a moment I saw the wolf spirit among them. We are all the Gaia soldiers, said Cornell, and that we have no choice but we can choose whom we fight alongside. Is this war a necessity? I asked. It doesn't exactly sound safe. It's not, but if the worm wins, we'll all die anyway, Olga shrugged. The name of the enemy reeked of decay and burning oil. War is not safe unless you know the trick, Pat smiled. The trick is to make the enemies die first. Do I have to choose a pack? I asked, just to make sure. No, Garu can survive on their own. Olga stated the obvious. You may not like it, but if you want to live, you need us and our support, and we need you. I have so many questions, I shook my head. What about the spirits, I asked. How does that work? The world casts a shadow and we call it the Umbra, said Lisa, and in the shadow every living creature, every emotion and idea, every important object exists as a spirit. That's all you need to know about at the moment. You are from all over Europe, I noticed. Is this like a standard for a sept? I didn't even know if that was a stupid question or not, or a smart one. I looked at Cornell. Is far from the standard, but a desperate time makes a strange bedfellow. He smiled sadly. Normally a sept is dominated by one tribe, maybe two. There are at least a dozen tribes, Daniel interrupted. And I hope, Maya, that you will choose yours wisely. Why did I hear the moon whispering to me, I asked. Luna gave us rage. That is why she is important, Olga said. That is why you'll never be able to touch silver again. So, if I got this all right, I've been conscripted into an ancient war against the worm, I said slowly, trying to put it all together, and the moon gave me rage as a weapon. But I must avoid silver. And there's a whole secret world of spirits, I continued, and I have to join a pack and choose a tribe. Exactly, Lisa nodded. As for the tribe, there are two people who could mentor you now. Olga is from the Black Furies, an ancient tribe of women warriors, and Cornell is from the Children of Gaia, and he's more of a peace harmony guy. Hey, what about my family's tribe? I asked. Lisa winced. Daniel sighed. Olga shook her head. What was the matter? I asked again. Your ancestors were the Get of Fenris, and no one here wants to have anything to do with that tribe, Cornell answered. They stand against everything we believe in. Does that mean that my blood is tainted? I asked. Tribe is not always a birthright. Sometimes it's a choice, Cornell said, so choose wisely. Get a finish. A tribe of werewolf supremacists who celebrate the destruction of the human world that Father Fenris promised as Ragnarok. Antagonistic to the other tribes to the extent that some whisper of worm taint. Hated and distrusted, many see them as another enemy of the War of the Apocalypse. Thank you for telling me, I said. I had the right to know, to learn about where I came from. For a moment, we're all silent. I wanted to learn about the tribes and find an option that would really resonate with who I was. Kim told me about the Bone Gnars, urban werewolves fighting for the disadvantaged and the marginalized, children of the rat. Bone Gnars. They stand for the rights of people and disenfranchised everywhere, making their homes in favelas, squats, and camps. Hated by other tribes because they act like tame dogs, eating the scraps off the human table. Do you really have a rat as the tribe patron? I asked. Sure we do, Kim asked. It's a very good patron. Resilient. You want to be like a rat, always managing, always afloat. That's why the Bonars protect every single Gaia's children, no matter how small, because we are all valid. They sighed heavily. Now tell it to the other Garo, and they look down at you, because you are a Bonar, and they think that they are superior. Prejudice, prejudice everywhere. I should become friends with everyone better. Pat was a glasswalker, and her tribe was finding its niche in cutting-edge technological cityscapes among the strands of the Weaver's Nest. It sounded intriguing. We talked for a while. An adaptable tribe of urban human lovers who worship the Weaver, or at least freely use its tools to fight the worm, hated by other tribes for their willingness to abandon the old ways and embrace the tools of the enemy. So you are basically a city dweller, I observed. All glasswalkers are. It's our natural habitat. I feel quite out of place in the forest. Why? I couldn't understand. The Pushka is our home. It may be your home, she said, and suddenly I realized we had less in common than I thought. I'm more of a city girl, she said. We use the Weaver to fight the worm. And the forest is not the Weaver's domain, and I happen to be quite fond of humanity. They have great potential. I wouldn't take you for a werewolf, you know, I said to Pat. She snorted. Why? Because you look mostly harmless, I admitted. She shrugged. I am, and I didn't expect to turn out werewolf either. I was a student, happy with my tablet and coding, and then boom, I was a Garo. How did you meet Cornell? I was curious. I was in his first pack. We were both hanging out with the hacktivist crowd back then. When things went south and he disappeared, I found him. How? I asked. Pat rolled her eyes. Girl, please, I'm a tech nerd, so I found him and talked to him about about coming back. How did you get Winter Weasel to be your patron? I was curious. I caught it, said Pat. Or rather, I made sure it would have more to eat with me rather than alone. That's how you catch weasels. But is it a forest spirit? I think it's a weasel, so it gets accustomed to live where there's food, and right now it's the city. It hunts electricity spirit these days and feasts on them. I asked Daniel if I could join his tribe, but he didn't understand the question. I'm a red talon, he said, as if explaining everything. Born exclusively from wild wolves, most of them hate every human alive for their millennia-long war against predators, wolves, and all over the planet. The other tribes hate them because they don't compromise and are blind to suffering of the human half of the Garu. What are the red talons? I asked Daniel. It is the T tribe of the Garu, who are born as wolves. Daniel explained, we usually don't mix with others, and we kill humans. But since I am the only one here, I decided that it was better to join the rest. It's better to have a pack than to be alone, I said. He nodded. There is always strength in numbers. I protect my folk better than when there are more werewolves around. Your folk? Wolves. That was all I needed to hear from him. But I was too exhausted to bug them from personal questions. One thing is bugging me, I said. Why are there so many of you here? Suddenly, everyone in Bioavasia is a werewolf or what? You know nothing, cub, Olga laughed bitterly. A mere century ago, there were dozens of packs in these forests. But none of the old guard survived the 90s, Lisa shook her head. We had to start from scratch. Until you showed up, there were only 6 of us. And the 3 of us not even local. Quinnell pointed out, 2 packs too small for their own good. Anyway, before you were admitted to a tribe, you need to prove yourself. Prove myself? I was shocked. I hadn't I proved myself enough already? You went through your first change, Pat said. She was leaning on a tree nearby, and you know everything you need to know at the moment. But you have to go through the rite of passage. Daniel rubbed against my leg, excited. A vision quest, Kim winked at me. And since we don't have time for tests, we need you to solve a real problem. Olga stepped in. Namely, we want you to find a way of ending this logging problem, Quinnell said gently. So, how would you like to do it? They all looked at me in anticipation. I took my time overwhelmed. By everything that happened, my old self was gone, replaced by a shape-shifting eco-warrior. But deep down, I was still the same person with the same ideas and ideals. I knew what to do. And I knew exactly what I wanted to do. The loggers need to see what happens when they cross the line. I decided we need to help them cross it. You are all blind and ignore our most powerful ally. Lisa rolled her eyes. There are many ancient spirits in Pushka, and we should talk to them. I'll lure the loggers to a protected area and record what they're doing, I continued. When it hits the internet, the authorities will have to ban the logging. Pat grinned. I know exactly the place you need. Daniel beamed, spoken like a true Ragabash. You were born under a new moon, weren't you, Maya? I looked at him surprised. How did he know? Mom always told me that when she gave birth to me, that the night was so dark that she was afraid something had happened to the moon and the stars, and that we were alone with the dark sky. You're right, I nodded. How did you know? Garu under the new moon are tricksters and questioners, said, just like you and me. We are the most cunning of them all, she winked, and our path is the perfect mix of glory, honor, and wisdom. Your place in Werewolf society will be determined by your renown. You can earn glory through defeating mighty enemies and succeeding at dangerous quests. You can earn honor by following your moral imperative and upholding the laws of Garu. You can earn wisdom by acting efficiently and thinking well before you act. Your renown will change as you play, contributing to Maya's legend among the Garu. No pressure. Olga must have sensed my confusion. Come on, we have a lot to discuss, she patted my shoulder, and we have to find your phone and wallet. I nodded and followed her. I had to tie up loose ends in my old life. I am sitting on a bus, the sun streaming through the windows and making it hard to see. The road cuts through a dense forest. My mind wanders. I remember doing something important, walking among the trees, looking for something, losing something I loved, gaining something unwanted. But then I'm fully awake and the memories scatter away. We're almost there, says Anya. I did something searching. She looks at me over her phone, and this place is amazing. The last primordial forest in Europe. I know, right? I smile. I can't. I'm not able to finish. I start to cough. My throat is sore. My lungs hurt. Anya, I turn to her. Anya's loyal. She looks at me, worried. You should drink something here. She pulls a bottle from her backpack and gives it to me. I take a sip and feel something dry and acrid in my mouth. Then it starts to move. I spit it out and see thousands of small spiders in my mouth. Threads of silk cover me, the seat, and everything around us. I try to scream, but they gag me the moment I open my mouth, and a few seconds later I'm covered in cobwebs, unable to move. I hear a hiss. Then slowly a long, dark, bloody shape comes out of my eyes, Anya's eye socket, pushing the eyes out. Black snake that reeks of rotten meat, acid, and oil. Don't fight, Maya. You're already mine. It says, just like your grandpa. Then it kisses me. Uh-oh. Maybe Anya's not to be trusted. I woke up in my bed in the B&B and for a moment thought the whole werewolf business had been a dream. Then I heard a muffled giggling, looked at and saw Anya and Bartek looking at me at the other bed. You caught us, but I thought you'd stay with your German friends a bit longer, said Bartek, embarrassed. We knew you were all right, Anya chimed in, and what was with you sneaking in through the window in the middle of the night, naked? She raised her eyebrow. I did some crazy things back home, but I've never partied that hard. Yeah, when my new friend said I'd destroyed the last set of clothes and I had to go back as a wolf, they weren't joking. There was much to talk about. I didn't know where to start. I'm alright. Sorry for disappearing so suddenly, I said. Because what else could I say? I got lost in the forest. Technically that part wasn't a lie. Then I stumbled on the activists and I kinda got carried away. Are you alright? I asked. I was worried about you. Yeah, said Anya, scratching her head. After we were separated in the forest, I got lost and Bartek found me. And we ended up here. Didn't you see anything? I hesitated. Unusual? We had to go the long way around to avoid the hunters, but apart from that, it was just the forest at night, she said. A bit scary, but nothing unusual. So Pat was right. The human mind couldn't cope with seeing a Krynos. What? 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 Are you ready? I didn't say nothing.